Let's plunge into this bad boy.
I am Hans.
And I'm Franz.
And we're here to plunge you up.
You up.
What's wrong with us?
You started it.
I did. I'm sorry. Hello, everybody, and welcome to Backstage Gaming, dramatic takes on your favorite games. I'm Chris.
And I'm Franz.
Fuck you. That's Dylan.
Yeah, I had to get that one in. So now you have to keep that outtake in, otherwise
guess so.
This joke doesn't make sense. I'm Dylan.
And we're here to talk to you about games and storytelling across medium. We're actors, that's what we do. And we hope that you're having...
Nice.
What's up?
I'm sorry, I'm done talking shit. Continue. This is what happens when we do a morning cast.
Yeah, honestly, every morning cast is a fucking shit show, but here we are. We're here to talk today about a piece of the storytelling pie that is essential and a way that games are able to engage with it in a very interesting way, and that is character design, and specifically character redesign, and how a character's appearance changing either in the same game or across multiple entries in a game series can be a useful visual shorthand for that character's story and that character's arc. And we've got a few fun examples of that. I think it's going to be fun. This time we prepared for our episode more than we usually do.
At least a little bit.
At least a little bit.
I was just thinking I wanted to get a couple out of the way that we didn't bring up before the episode, so we know we're not talking about them.
Yes.
Okay. So when I think of character redesigns in games, it's usually through like collecting upgrades, and that changes your character's appearance, and it provides this idea of you as the player and the character you're controlling growing more powerful. So I think the best examples of this are Samus from Metroid, which we talk about all the time.
Yep.
And
friend of the show, Samus Aran.
And X from the Mega Man X series, where you can replay levels and find like secret upgrades that change his appearance, and you know the list of options you have available grows, and also like in the story it feels like X is becoming more powerful. There is that constant feedback loop of feeling good about yourself.
Yeah, there's also that element in a lot of like online RPGs, World of Warcraft, etc., of like you get new gear that looks different, and you know, typically the gear starts to look, and I'm going to put this in quotes, cooler as the stats get better. Not hating on Warcraft's design, but like, boy howdy, they have a very particular aesthetic, and it's not my favorite.
It's not quite mine either.
But there's that sort of element as well. That's also not quite what we're going to be talking about today. But I agree that getting the ones that we're not saying out of the way first is probably smart.
Yeah.
To kick off, character design is a really important element of making sure that your story starts off on a good point. Especially in a medium like games, where you get a lot less dialogue time than a film or a play. Games are uniquely challenged to convey as little of their story in word as possible. I don't know the stats. I watched a video on this years ago, and it was like the average game, even while being, 10 to 20 times longer than your average film, has like on average, the same amount of dialogue or less.
Yeah.
And so the more you can do to inform about the character, especially about like main characters and main supporting cast of your game through the way they look, the better. And a game that we both were like, yes, this is very good to talk about, was the Fire Emblem series.
Yes.
Those games have some really solid character design, even as the games have gone on and they've been getting like more and more and more
divisive.
Yeah.
I won't necessarily say that like any of the later designs are bad. But,
no,
like,
I don't think they
certainly have. They certainly have been divisive. It's just like a difference in art style.
Yeah, they have been going more and more for a like modern anime aesthetic, while they started in somewhere between like a traditional anime style and like a more Western aesthetic.
Yeah, kinda.
Like
I think it was always fantasy, but like I feel like the Japanese aesthetic for fantasy has changed over the decades to kind of splinter off into its own thing.
Definitely.
Like there's a difference between Berserk and Sword Art Online.
Very
Did I nail it?
you nailed it with like, it's one of those statements where it's like, it's so obvious I'd never stop to like compare them. And then you said that out loud, and it's like Aku just tore open a portal in time. Oh my god. Anyway.
Okay.
But Fire Emblem is a really cool example because in every Fire Emblem game, your characters that you control... Let me begin again. Fire Emblem is a series of tactical role-play-ish games. You typically take on the part of the leader of some sort of military or mercenary organization, or sometimes you're just like a noble trying to get somewhere and gathering allies along the way, or whatever it happens to be. But traditionally, the formula for every Fire Emblem game is that you are a noble or you are working for a noble who, because of war, has had to flee their home, and you're now fighting to get back and liberate your home from an evil empire. Exactly. And so you play by controlling an assortment of different characters and units, and as the game series has progressed, it's gone more and more in on each of the characters that you control having their own sort of arcs that you can explore, very much being characters, not just being like, this is my knight, this is my axeman. I know this mage because we went to the academy together, and then there's like no further... that's your flavor text for this digital piece of stats. Exactly, and they've moved much more in a direction of like you can like watch cutscenes between battles of different characters talking to one another and developing relationships, and like we've talked a little bit about that in the past, and it's a very cool thing. But along with that, your characters have two different forms essentially. Most characters you get over the course of the game begin as a class, for example, fighter or knight or cavalier, or in the case of one example that I'd like to talk about, the main character Ike from Fire Emblem Path of Radiance, you start out as a class called Ranger, and then every class, once they hit level 20, the next time they level up, or in some games you have to jump through a couple different hoops to make this happen, they achieve like a rank change, and so fighters turn into warriors, and knights turn into generals, and cavaliers turn into paladins, and their visual design changes. But for the main character, that typically comes not only with a change in the model, but also a change in like the key art for them that you see in cutscenes, and a change in all of their animations that you see in like the story moments. Exclusive to Ike, but I get where you're coming from. Well, that's why I wanted to talk about Ike, you see, for this topic. Ike is pretty cool. Shut up. You're dumb. I know I am. So Ike starts out as a ranger, and he's got like, a kind of ratty old cape. He's got some cobbled together pieces of armor. He's got like a tattered... He's very much a backwoods mercenary. Yeah, and his design reflects that. Nothing on his outfit seems to match correctly. And then when he achieves his rank change at that point in the story where he is promoted to being a lord and changes his class to lord, he gets a whole visual overhaul. And not only is it like not really any less haphazardly put together, but like nicer looking gear. Yeah. Like he's still got a very hodgepodge kind of armor aesthetic going on, which I really like because again, that just speaks to who this character is. I think that's just his personality. Yeah. Like this is telling the story of a guy who doesn't really give a shit how he looks, but now being a lord, he has to kind of try to. Yeah, so he's like, fine, I'll get more expensive shit to clap onto my body. But they also update that key art, and in doing so, not only does what he's wearing change, but like his posture changes. Suddenly, when he's a ranger, he's got this sort of like not hunch, but he's kind of like leaning forward. He looks very brash. He's posed in such a way that speaks to like a very like direct running right in, like, I'm gonna get this done kind of personality. When he becomes a lord, it's right before he's made, like, the general of this entire liberation army, and they change him to, like, he's a little more upright. He's still got, like, a very kind of, like, I'm gonna tell you how it is sort of posture, but he looks a little more reserved. He looks a little bit older. He looks a little bit more experienced. And that's, like, Fire Emblem Path of Radiance is one of my favorite games for the GameCube. It's a fantastic game.
It's a good one.
And things like that sort of attention to character are one of the reasons I love it so much. Like, that's a really good way of exemplifying the story that this character has gone through to this point, and the loss that he's experienced, and, like, the tempering of that youthful energy, while also setting him up for that next step of the storytelling.
Also mechanically, when a character ranks up, not a whole lot changes. Like, I think the primary benefit of ranking up is that you gain a massive stat boost.
True.
So, essentially, Ike, in addition to all this character stuff, like, when you play the game, he is a more capable fighter because he just gets, like, a massive overhaul in, like, how he plays, and he's just now better than a lot of units surrounding him.
Yeah. And that's, again, speaks to him coming into his own in a way. Path of Radiance is very much a story about, like, Ike and his family trying to keep shit together.
Yeah. I can't remember, Chris. Does Ike get ether after he gets promoted?
He does not automatically get ether, but that is the skill that he gets if you use an occult scroll on him.
Okay.
But yeah, that's the other thing, is once he ranks up, he gets access to this very powerful ability if you choose to devote the resources to, which, like, you should, because he has to be in every single fight.
Yeah, and he also has a one-on-one. I'm sorry.
Yeah, we're getting away from it, but, like, that is a really good, like, in a nutshell example of what we're talking about here, and what kind of, like, the mindset behind this idea of character change visually being a useful storytelling technique is.
I think it's also worth noting that there is a sequel to the game that Ike is in which he goes from, like, 15 to, like, I don't remember how many years are between the two games.
I think it's like a 5 or 10 year gap.
It looks like it, because he, like, goes from, like, teenager to big beefy boy.
Yeah, and, like, Soth, who's, like, 9 in Path of Radiance, is one of the main characters in the first chapter of Radiant Dawn, and he looks like he's in his early 20s, I would guess. Like I said, I don't remember exactly, but it's definitely
I don't want to get away from it, but, like, you know, it's, like, on top of the change within the single game, there's also a change between this game and its sequel, and it's just, like, this constant, like, oh man, Ike is so cool.
Yeah.
He's never gonna stop being cool.
And then in that sequel, like you said, he's much bigger. He looks like he's got a beach bod going on. But again, they also, like, I love that because his key art, he's kept the, like, slightly more upright stature of his Lord key art from Path of Radiance, but then he's also, like, he looks like a little more relaxed. He looks a little more chill. He's definitely had time to, like, come into his own a little more, and you can see that in his character design.
He goes back to his old colors as well.
Yep, which is a very good look.
It's 3 years. I just looked it up. It's 3 years.
Dang, it seemed like a lot more in terms of how some of those characters changed.
Well, 3 years in anime years is a lot.
That's true. Who knows? Maybe Soth was in the hyperbolic time chamber.
Yeah. Man, that's for, like, 2 people. I don't know how many of our listeners actually watch Dragon Ball Z.
Who is the Venn diagram of people who really give a shit about these 2 games for the GameCube and Wii and are also big Dragon Ball Z fans? Probably not tiny.
But I don't think our listener base really covers it.
Another game series that we wanted to talk about with regards to this, that, boy howdy, there's a lot in this series to talk about. Kingdom Hearts. Kingdom Hearts character design, so good.
It's garish, but, like, in a lovable way.
The zippers are my friend.
Not Pete's.
Pete's zipper is my best friend. Shut up.
All right, and you...
Talk about Kingdom Hearts.
This is your fault. Okay. So for people who don't know, Kingdom Hearts is it's like a crossover series between Final Fantasy and Disney, except it's increasingly become its own thing. It's a weird beast to describe. But the core premise is that you are playing as a you're playing as a kid named Sora, and he goes around traveling from world to world with his two friends, Donald Duck and Goofy, and most of the worlds are Disney themed. And
They become the greatest heroes
yeah.
of the multiverse.
Yeah, they do it to either save the galaxy, or sometimes it's to find their friends, sometimes it's to, it varies from game to game. But, it's just the happy-go-lucky adventures of anime boy and his two Disney friends.
You're really not wrong.
On top of that, there's like a very long plot with a little convoluted, but it's fun.
We've
fine.
talked a little bit about the Kingdom Hearts plot in episodes past. That's less what we're talking about now, thank God.
Yeah.
Because I am not equipped.
What I wanted to focus on, and what Chris and I were talking about before the episode started, was the main character Sora. In between the first and second game, I think a year passes, and dude hits a growth spurt. But on top of that, he kind of outgrows his old clothes, so he needs new clothes. And they do a lot to kind of facilitate how much stronger he has grown. So in the first game, Sora has, he wears primarily white with some primary colors splashed in, and then I think there's like a black trimming on his hoodie. And that's about it.
It's a really cool design. Like, they managed to absolutely nail, and this goes like across the board for like Sora in his animations and everything else.
Yeah.
They really nail that perfect crossover of like the Final Fantasy Tetsuo Nomura like straps and silhouette aesthetic with the like Disney goofiness.
Yeah, it's very bright. It's a very like happy-go-lucky appearance. But the coolest thing about Kingdom Hearts 2 is that because he outgrows his outfit, he needs some new threads. And the redesign for Sora in Kingdom Hearts 2, I remember when I was like 12 or whatever in 7th grade, was the coolest thing. Because, so it's the same basic silhouette as his old clothes. I think his pants go down a little further to his ankles. They used to go like down to his mid-thigh. I don't want to say it's monochromatic, but instead of like heavy whites and primary colors, it is now almost completely black, except there are primary color trimmings and accents.
Yeah,
so
they incorporate like the bright reds and yellows and whites that made up most of his Kingdom Hearts 1 look into like the suspenders and like the shoelaces, and like they find pockets on the outfit to put that color so it still feels like Sora.
Yeah, it still has that Disney happy-go-luckiness, but like the swap in color from white to black really implies that like, and I don't want to say this like without oversell it, but like it does kind of imply that like this is a slightly more serious Sora. He's more capable. This is facilitated by his animations and the amount of actions he can do in the gameplay.
Yeah.
Sora in Kingdom Hearts 2 is a very acrobatic guy. He does some stuff that you would see in like the prequel Star Wars movies.
Oh yeah, and it's so
like
good.
Jumping and flipping, and so it's this really nice evolution of the first Kingdom Hearts, both in like how he controls and also like how he looks.
And then within Kingdom Hearts 2, another element that's really cool is there's a mechanic in the game where you gain access to different forms, which are essentially like, as you build up a meter in combat, you can spend that meter to go into a form that enhances some element of your playstyle. So there's Valor form, in which you get to wield an additional Keyblade. You basically like turn into double scimitar cool guy, and it ups like all of your physical damage and like makes you better at that kind of thing.
And so his color palette turns red for this.
Yeah. There's Wisdom form, which comes with a blue color palette, which increases your magic. It turns your Keyblade into like basically a gun. You don't like swing it like a sword anymore. You shoot projectiles out of it. It increases your mobility.
You have increased movement. You can play a lot more defensively and like take pot shots.
And it ups your magic casting power and I believe it gives you either unlimited mana or way more mana to spend on magic.
I would have to ask Dakota.
I don't remember exactly, but it does something to like refresh your spell casting resource as well. Then there is Master form, which gives you Master Form is my fucking favorite because it's getting into like anime god levels of aesthetic design. It gives you like, you get like basically like a goldenrod kind of color palette.
Yeah.
You've got a keyblade in one hand. You are
and the other one's
levitating the
right.
other keyblade around your other hand like you're a fucking badass Jedi OC. You fly rather than walk, or at least like levitate.
Yeah.
I don't remember what benefits it gives you stats-wise.
I think it gives you a bit of both, but honestly, the last time I played Kingdom Hearts 2 was in middle school, so...
Yeah, I don't remember exactly either. And then there's Final Form, which, you know, input Frieza.gif.
This is my final form!
In which Final Form is my favorite because it basically inverts your color palette.
Yeah.
Sora's main color palette is black with
silver.
What?
Oh, sorry. I remember Final Form being silver.
Yeah. If your regular color palette is black with those bright primary accents, Final Form is like white and silver primarily. And you just like you control two keyblades floating around you with your mind powers while you fly around the stage and just like are the king of the world. But again, all of these things are reflected by these color choices. Obviously, red, a very aggressive color, the color of fire and like in symbolism a lot of like anger and danger. Of course they're going to make the one where you dash into the thick of things swinging two big keys around. Of course that one's going to be red. It's obvious stuff, but like again, that's another element of like you don't need to know everything about the lore of this like Valor Form transformation. You turn red and you get an extra sword, and that tells you a lot about what the character is doing.
I just remembered this, so before we move on from Kingdom Hearts, there are two things. The first thing is, another thing I really liked about the first two Kingdom Hearts games is that whenever you, actually even Kingdom Hearts 3 has it, but whenever you visit a planet where your design would otherwise clash with the aesthetic, so, for example, there is a time where you go to the Nightmare Before Christmas, Halloween Town.
It's so good.
And, you know, Sora's, like, bright primary colors would definitely clash with that. So they give him a more Halloween spooky, almost like a vampire type of look. So he doesn't clash. And, like, honestly, it gets you into the world that you're inhabiting. It's a really nice, like... I can't really properly describe it, but, like, in addition to not clashing visually, it's also kind of cool because it's like, ooh, I got a new design. I'll play around in here because it feels inviting.
And I don't believe that happens for every world.
No.
But they do it for, like, the Night Before Christmas one. They do it for the Pirates of the Caribbean one.
They don't do it for the Pirates of the Caribbean one. I think that's the problem.
Oh, that's right.
That world.
That's right. I was like, surely they do it for the Pirates of the Caribbean one, and then I remembered how much you stick out in that world.
But yeah, ignoring that one, Pirates, Nightmare Before Christmas, The Little Mermaid. Let's see, in the later games, Toy Story and Monsters Inc. You get redesigned for those. No, it's a really good job. Oh, I think in Kingdom Hearts 3. When you go to the Pirates of the Caribbean world, your art style doesn't change, but you wear more piratey clothing.
Yes, that's what I was thinking of. You're still real bright compared to the rest of that world.
Yeah, but it's not as jarring just through the wardrobe change. Last thing, regarding Kingdom Hearts 1, sorry. So I love Final Fantasy VII. I feel like I've established that in previous episodes. One of the characters in Final Fantasy VII, the main character of Final Fantasy VII, Cloud, he shows up in Kingdom Hearts, and, you know, they kind of futz with the design of every character that is from a Final Fantasy game that shows up in Kingdom Hearts. But Cloud sticks out to me because they took the design elements from a character in Final Fantasy VII, Vincent, and they added those to Cloud to give him more of a mysterious, like, world-weary feel. And Square Enix has released a action figure of this design called Cloud Another Form, and it's real dumb. He has, like, a cape, and, like, his normally gloved hand is now, like, a claw, and he has, like, a little gargoyle wing sticking out from under the cape, but I really love it. And as a kid, I thought it was awesome.
It's a nice way of like taking this classic character, because other than these additions, he's very much like it's his design from Final Fantasy VII, which is a really cool and instantly recognizable character design.
They just decided to slap some extra shit on it.
Yeah. And they also do my absolute favorite thing that makes no sense and is really stupid, but they wrap his big fuck-off Buster Sword in bandages.
I always forget about that.
And, like...
I don't know why.
It's a really dumb thing that it happens in anime a lot, and I don't know why they do it, but I would be lying if I said it wasn't my favorite
anime
fucking...
that much.
Well, I'm thinking about, like...
Like, maybe it happens in Rurouni Kenshin, but...
I'm trying to... Like, it's a trope that I know I've seen in other action anime, but I can't... And of course, now that I'm saying this out loud, I can't think of which ones.
But, like, I definitely believe it happens. I can't think off the top of my head, like, where. But yeah, it's dumb, but, like, it leaves an impression. All right, what was the next game? Dark Souls? Or are we doing Playbill?
Oh, let's do the Playbill. Let's remember how this show runs and do our due diligence. So join us in the Playbill where we talk about other shit. Oh, thank God I landed in this theater seat. That was the dumbest thing I've ever done on a podcast.
No, I really liked that. You shut up.
Thank you for joining us in the Playbill. Thank you, as always, for listening. It really means the world to us that we have an audience for this show where we get to talk about shit that just gets us going. But now's where we talk about other things that we're doing. Hey, Dylan, you know that whole, that Neon Genesis Evangelion thing came out on Netflix, and
Evangelion?
It kickstarted my interest in older mecha anime. Do you have any recommendations about a mecha anime I could watch and a podcast to listen along with it?
Well, it just so happens that I am part of a podcast called Dude You Remember Macross. That is DUDE. Where I talk with your friend in mine, our mutual friend and gentleman and a scholar, Coop, and we talk about this show, Super Dimensional Fortress Macross. It was a very big show in Japan in the 80s, and it was adapted into an Americanized version called Robotech, also in the 80s. And it is a fascinating show that kind of talks about there's a conflict between humans and aliens, not peaceful humans, but like humans as we know them. And then, like, you know, there's this warfaring race called the Zentradi, and the conflict between them kind of brings up questions about, like, what makes us human. We talk about, like, pop culture and music and the concept of love. It's a romance story. It's got everything. But anyway, it's a really cool show. We just wrapped up the first series. And gave our final thoughts and opinions on it. So it's fun, and if you want to hear us talk about it, you should check us out on anchor.fm/dudeyouRemember. We are also now on Spotify, Google Play, and Apple Podcasts. Check us out on Facebook. Our Twitter handle is @dudeyouRemember. Again, that is DUDE.
Yeah, you should also go and show some love to our friends over at the Unexplored Places, an actual play podcast. As I understand it, either the day that this episode comes out or the next day is the day that they're releasing their finale of season 1, which is incredible, and like congrats to them because it's been a really fun show to listen to.
Yeah.
And just last night, as of our day recording this, Dylan and I both logged into a Discord channel to record with them for the character creation section for their season 2. We can't say anything more about that right now, but it's going to be real fucking good. I'm so excited.
I am super excited.
So be on the lookout for that. It's going to be a really great show. You should also go and listen to season 1 of Unexplored Places. I've been re-listening to it at work, and it's super fucking good. You can find them on Twitter @unexploredcast or at unexploredcast.libsyn.com, and you should go show them some love, drop some iTunes reviews, do all that good shit. I
also want to throw out that Chris will be a regular for season 2, so definitely tune in for his dulcet tones if you're already a fan. I will be a sporadic appearance.
Other things, I've been getting some casting offers, and my voice is going to be appearing on a number of upcoming podcasts in
Nice.
major to minor situations. The one that I know is coming out soon, you should be listening to Unwell, a Midwestern Gothic mystery. I would be saying this even if I wasn't in it. It is one of the best audio dramas I've ever listened to. It's incredible. It's got some of the best sound design in like the medium. They do some really cool stuff. And I'm super honored that I got to be a part of it. And if you listen to it all the way to the end at some point in probably a month or two, when the season wraps and episode 12 comes out, you'll get to hear me screaming my head off in one of the most fun recording situations I ever got to do. So you should definitely be giving them some love. They're on Twitter at Unwell Podcast, or you can find them on iTunes, Spotify, wherever you get your podcast. Show them some love, drop some support. It's a really cool show. And we have a Patreon to plug. It's there if you want to give us... like, I feel bad being like, give us money, yes. Because that's not cool. And, everyone's situation is different, and not everyone wants to throw money into a podcast, and that's totally fair.
Helpful reminder that we do have a Patreon if you feel like throwing $1
but like,
or something.
If you like what we do, if you wanna show us some love, if you wanna help us do things like increase our mic quality or be able to take more time to devote to this show and making other shows in the future, whatever we manage to do with the money, once we hit our next goal, we'll be able to start paying for like transcriptions to happen of the old episodes, because God knows I don't have the time or the expertise to do that, to a good job of that. Consider throwing us some money. We've recently hit the point where we hit our first goal, which means that this is now a listener-supported show. We are not paying out of pocket for any of the expenses related to web hosting or anything, and that is incredible, and thank you to everyone who has already pledged to make that happen. If you like what we do and you want to support it in a genuine and fungible way, that's a great way to do it. If you can't, we totally get it. We love you anyway. Yeah. Consider sharing the show around. Consider dropping a review on iTunes. All of those things help us just as much as the actual monetary donations, if not more. That's all I've got in the playbill, so we will hop back into the meat of the episode now, I think. So to jump back into our topic on this idea of like how character design changes and how those changes affect what we think of the character and where the character's at. Another interesting thing to look at is moving from game to game.
Which we did a little bit with Sora.
But specifically with things like reboots and reimaginings and anything like that. There's a lot of great examples of this. Redesigning characters between games is frequently a necessity because maybe you're working in a new engine, maybe you're designing for a new platform, whatever it happens to be. But as with all things, when you take a little time to think about how you're going to do this redesign and how you're going to use it to influence where the character is, you can get some really cool shit. Being me, I'm going to talk about God of War because
and being me,
I'm
going to talk about Devil May Cry because I have a brand.
We are brand loyal here. God of War 2018, I have talked about a lot on this show. I think it's a great game. The way they handle Kratos' redesign is so fucking good. His character design in God of War 2018 is so evocative of a man trying to not be what he was. He's got these bandages wrapped around his forearms where he used to like have the chains for the Blades of Chaos. And there's a point later on in the game where like you see the scars, but there's very early on a moment of him like noticing one has come loose and very pointedly retying it. Your starting outfit and whatever gear you put on, you always has this, you can see like the tattered remnants of that like Greek panoply armored skirt that he wore that like is now old and ratty, but he's still wearing it. It's so good. His design has changed. He's like much larger and much like, God of War for the PlayStation 2, he looks like a beefy underwear model, essentially. God of War 2018, he's still ripped, but he's like, it's the difference between looking like a bodybuilder and looking like a power lifter. They have redesigned his model to sell this sense of like power, and maybe he's not as fast, but he's got the heft to swing this massive fuck off axe that is your weapon for most of the game. It's just this great sense of like, this is clearly a very different stage of his life. This is clearly a very different attitude that you can see just through the way he moves and the way that he has chosen to like dress himself. And I love it because it does all of that while also all of those choices help it to fit into that Norse aesthetic. When you think about Vikings, you don't think about underwear models with big rippling pectorals. You think about big bears of dudes on long ships. And so that's what Kratos has become to fit into this Norse mythology world that it is now taking place in. That's my 5 minutes on God of War. I fucking love that game.
I guess
something else.
I have to now do my 5. The show was always this, wasn't it? Like our second episode was God of War and Devil May Cry. Devil May Cry 3. I mentioned we talked about it in the second episode of the show, but it is a prequel to the first game and stars a much younger, brattier, more boisterous Dante. And so his design in Devil May Cry 3, I think the way the game starts is he literally just comes out of the shower. So he's wearing his his requisite leather pants because he needs them. And then he just kind of he gets the call to adventure, and then he just tosses on his coat and just goes right outside. So he's wearing a leather long coat, leather pants, and no shirt, and he's just like, all right.
Big fuck off red
and
leather
he's just
duster.
Like, all right,
it's
yeah,
so
let's
good.
go. He also sports a bit more of a, I don't know what to call the haircut, but like it's clear that like he doesn't put a lot of effort into his hair. He just has like basic bangs and like shoulder length hair. When you beat the game, there's in the ending he is redesigned to look like his Devil May Cry 1 counterpart, where his clothing is a bit more what I think when I think of like 1800s vampire hunter. That's kind of the look he sports in the first game.
Yeah.
Lots of belts, straps for like guns and other devil hunter tools and what have you. Yeah.
Rolls in strapped.
And his haircut in the first game was kind of blocky because lower poly, but you could tell like he was putting a little bit more effort into his appearance. And so it's a nice like we've come full circle. And in addition, in Devil May Cry 3, when you beat the game and start over on like a higher difficulty or whatever you want to do, you have the option to play with that Devil May Cry 1 design. So it's this nice feeling of like you've gotten through. He's grown. Yes.
And so Dylan, now I have to ask, DMC Devil May Cry.
Just the design in general.
Like we're talking a lot about examples of this where like it works well and it's fitting. I have not played there. For those of you who don't know, they did like a reboot right after Devil May Cry 4. The next Devil May Cry game was just called Devil May Cry, but like in big letters above that, it was just DMC. Yeah. So that's what it's taken to being called. And it was controversial, to say the least. I won't
shit on DMC Devil May Cry too much.
Yeah, I'm not asking you to shit on it. I'm curious about your opinions on that design and how you felt that.
Honestly, I had more issues with his personality. His design is fine.
That's
honestly,
totally fair.
It's like he wears this Dante. Like in terms of character, he's a bit more of a douchebag. I mean, Dante in Devil May Cry 3 was a douchebag, but like he was a very different type of douchebag. It's easier to explain if you've seen both cutscenes from both games, but Dante in DMC Devil May Cry, he's kind of rocking a wife beater under a really baggy jacket. I can't remember if it's a trench coat or not, but his haircut's like it's a very British punk type of haircut.
It's like a severe undercut.
Yeah.
But like not a long one.
Honestly, it's fine because I know they wanted to do something like very distinctly different from the established Dante. I'm sorry that like I'm floundering a bit, but like honestly, my opinion is that like it's fine for what they were going for.
That's fair. And I kind of sprung this on you. Not being a fan of the Devil May Cry series, having not like played a ton of them, I honestly really like the design choice in DMC Devil May Cry. Like I think
the character designs look fine with like some exceptions.
Yeah, like I'm not saying that it is better or not than, the traditional Dante, but I actually I thought it was a really cool take on the character that then apparently just like the game didn't do very interesting
Okay, so
things
I
with.
guess the biggest issue that a lot of Devil May Cry fans have that, as a fan base, we have trouble expressing is that, like, a lot of Dante's insults, and sorry to get on this tangent, but a lot of the insults
No,
that
it's fine. It's
Dante
interesting.
flings at the end, like, there's something very fun and lighthearted and easygoing about the way Dante is a douchebag in Devil May Cry 3. Yeah,
He's sort of
it's very
Spider-Man-esque.
Spider-Man-esque.
He's like a slightly more dickish
Whereas
Spider-Man.
in DMC Devil May Cry, it just feels more mean-spirited. Like, Dante is a very mean-spirited character in that game.
So it was less that, like, the design or the gameplay was off. It was
Well,
the treatment
gameplay
of the character,
also,
like,
you know, as a casual Devil May Cry fan, I don't think it would bother me as much, but, like, there is a level of depth in Devil May Cry 4, specifically, that the reboot wasn't really able to capture. It's not... we don't need to get into that now, but
that's neither here nor there. I was curious about that. Felt kind of like the elephant in the room with regards to this topic in Devil May Cry.
That's fair.
The last thing we wanted to touch on before we let y'all go, a trend in a lot of modern games that fits into this discussion a little bit, and it's the idea of, to use the term that sort of kicked it off, fashion souls. So in the game series Dark Souls, there are a lot of gear that you can get. There's a lot of different armor designs, there's a lot of different things, and to a certain point, what you wear comes down very much to personal preference. Dark Souls is a game that does a very good job of not having... There is gear that is better than other gear, but there is not gear that is better empirically. It's gear that's better for particular styles of play. Because Dark Souls is all about, like, figuring out the way that makes sense for you to play and then statting yourself and gearing yourself up appropriately. And so there's been this trend of, like, fans of the series starting to wear gear that maybe is not the best, but is rather the gear that they think looks the coolest and the gear that they think reflects their character and their particular Dark Souls hero the most accurately. And that's really fucking cool, because it's basically putting the power of this sort of character design and, like, visuals being evocative of the character in your hands because you're the person coming up with this character.
Yeah. And a lot of RPGs do this, but I think Dark Souls is a good example because, you know, there is a term for fashion souls where it is this idea of self-expression of, like, how you play your character.
Yeah, it's been around. Like, people have been doing it ever since there's been RPGs with, like, good-looking aesthetic armor choices to be made. But Dark Souls provided a kind of unique point for it, again, for having that focus on, like, there's not really a, you know, other than the obvious, like, this is a broken sword you found on a skeleton, there's not, like, objectively wrong weapon or armor choices.
I also know that it is fun for players to cosplay as characters they come across in the game.
There's an element of that, because, like, you can find...
No,
I thought for a minute
in
you were
the
talking
game.
about, like, in real life cosplay, and
No,
I was like, well, yes,
within the
Dylan,
game.
of course there is. Yeah, like, there's definitely... In most games, you can find the armor that bosses or particular NPCs are wearing and just get them. And so you can, like, if you really like the Farron Legion in Dark Souls 3, you can get their armor after you beat them and just look like them. And it's quite cool. And, like, you can mix and match your favorite aesthetic pieces for out of, like, the helmets and the chest pieces and the legs and the arms, and, like, find a style that, like, you like. And the beautiful thing is, it might not be the most efficient for your playstyle, but you can still play the game, and you can beat the game looking however you want, and that's really cool. Just as a nice little, like, series that touches on this in a really nice way, The Legend of Zelda. They've redesigned Link so many goddamn times. And every time, or at least most every time, they do a really good job of doing it in a way that fits the tone of the story. Like, I'm not going to sit here and be like, yes, the way that they modeled the 16-bit sprite in A Link to the Past shows clear character development, because, like,
Or the green trimmings of the rim of his hat in this game is so much different from the green trimmings of his hat in this
No,
game.
of course not.
Yeah.
But think about, like, Link in Wind Waker.
Mm-hmm.
When they went to that cel-shaded style and they emphasized that cartoonishness. That Link was so expressive.
Yeah.
Like, they have, like, Breath of the Wild Link is almost as expressive as Wind Waker Link.
Yeah.
And they did so much with that and used that design to such effect to sell that, like, this is a kid on an adventure. And, like, that's great. And then Twilight Princess, say what you will about the game, they really leaned into a more realistic aesthetic with that, and Link's design and the way that you can see, like, the chainmail peeking out under his tunic and things like that, that really helps to sell this more serious and more, like,
Attitude Era.
Yeah, like, for lack of a better word, slightly edgier version of Hyrule that they were selling with that game. And then now, with in the wake of this year's E3, everyone's talking about Princess Zelda's redesign for Breath of the Wild 2. What?
Nothing. I was teasing rehydrated Ganondorf.
Rehydrated and big sexy thirsty Ganon daddy. But like, Zelda, it's a very similar design to her design in Breath of the Wild, as much as you see of her, mostly in flashbacks. But then there's, like, elements of she's wearing her traveling boots. She's got her hair cut short to be a little bit more ready. There's a lot, like, we have seen snippets of this character, and it has spawned so much fan speculation about her being playable in the sequel and her, like, what her role is going to be in this game. And if that doesn't speak to the power of a good character design, I don't know what does.
Mm.
And everyone wanting to fuck the mummy.
Yeah.
Don't fuck the mummy.
At least wait for him to get some water first.
Yeah, let him soak in the tub for a bit. Anyway, that's our show for this week.
I know you're like, if you are listening to this episode, like, I'm not giving you any context. Don't even ask me.
Go on Twitter. That'll do it. That'll do it for this week. We hope you had fun listening to us go deep on this very particular aspect of how character stories are told. Dylan, anything you want to leave us with other than don't fuck the mummy?
Nah.
All right.
I don't. I wish
Don't
I
fuck
did.
the mummy stand the test of time.
Yeah.
Thank you again, as always, for listening to Backstage Gaming. If you like what we're doing, please feel free to check us out at our website, bsgpod.com. We've got all our episodes there. We've got info about me and Dylan. We've got contact form if you want to get in touch with us. And if you like what we're doing, check us out on iTunes. Check us out on Stitcher, Spotify, the Google Play Store. Leave us some iTunes reviews and ratings and help us climb those charts and get more listens. It really, like, more than anything else, if you can take the time to write up a nice review and drop a rating, it will really help, and that is a huge step to getting us to get more listens, so that would be an incredibly helpful thing. And we really appreciate you taking the time to do that and just to listen, and we love talking to you every week. Hey, Dylan, what's our social media handles?
Yeah, I mean, if you want to check us out on social media, you should check out our Facebook, our Twitter, where our handle is at @BSG_cast, and you can also find us on YouTube. You know, if you want to talk about the stuff we do, maybe talk about some redesigns in games that you like, you should use that hashtag BSGpod. Also, if you like the key art that we use, that was provided to us by our friend Brennan French. You should definitely check out his Squarespace at brennan-french.squarespace.com. That is BRENNEN-French.squarespace.com. Or you can check him out on Instagram at instagram.com/BrennanFrenchArts.
You should also go show some love to our friend BioQuery. He's the musician behind our theme song, .Sound Radio Volume 1 Instrumentality. He's got a couple recent releases out that are both phenomenal. He put out an EP a few months ago called Post-Human Angst, and then just a few weeks ago he dropped an EP that he produced featuring a bunch of hip-hop artists and rappers from around the country and the world that's, like, it's so fucking cool.
I've heard some of it. It's pretty fun jams.
It's really good. And you should totally show him some love. He's got all of his stuff up on Spotify. If you search BioQuery, that's BIOQUERY, or you should check out his SoundCloud, soundcloud.com/BioQuery. Again, one more quick plug. If you have the means, if you like what we do, if you want to show us some love and encourage us to do better things and do more work and up our production value and all that good stuff, consider dropping some love at our Patreon, patreon.com/bsgpod. Every dollar makes a huge difference, and again, I'm still not over how cool it is that y'all are supporting all of our like necessary overhead at this point. That is so
nice.
humbling and so cool, and we really appreciate it. So yeah, check that out if you want. We've got some different reward tiers. We've got like a Discord server where people hang out and chat about what they're playing and what they're watching, and I would love to have more of y'all in there. So give that a look, and with all that said and done, thank you for listening, and we will talk to you again next week. Goodbye.
Goodbye, all.
Don't fuck the mummy.
I mean, you can if you want to, but get his consent first.